It was a big weekend in the relegation battle in the Premier League. Wolves pulled 5 points clear of the bottom three with a 1-0 win at Bournemouth. And I tell you what, the bottom three, well, Southampton aside, Ipswich and Leicester were really hoping that Bournemouth could do them a favour and expecting it. But Wolves with a precious victory. Now, I know there was a sending off, of course, for Bournemouth, but Wolves still looked all right in those early stages of the game. A little bit under the caution stuff, but you thought they're going to give them a game today. And they ran out 1-0.
I just think they're simply a better team than those other teams.
We've expected this, haven't we, for a few weeks now, for Wolves to start to pull away, and this is early signs of it.
And there's they've got a game changer in Matheus Cunha, who's scored not just a good amount of goals, but key goals for them as well. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the other teams down there, you could probably make the argument for Ipswich that Liam Delap would be that, but I think it's just too much of an ask. And I think once you get into the situation where, because you mentioned 5 points, right? You say Wolves pulled 5 points clear. I had an image of some Wolves actually pulling a sled when you said that, the way you framed it. But to me, the much more indicative stat around this conversation is that Wolves have won twice the amount of league games that Ipswich have won. And that tells its own story, I think.
And Ipswich have lost to Southampton.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of inexplicable.
And
really.
Spurs. Absolutely inexcusable.
That is such a damning defeat, isn't it, when you look back on it? But as many people have observed, Ipswich have got a lot of what you might call championship players, and even one or two from League One. So it was always a tall order. And you were looking at McKenna. Can he pull a rabbit out of a hat here? Can he pull a 17th position out of a hat here? And it is beginning to look unlikely now, because that Wolves squad is better than anything down there. It is helping Wolves that Leicester City are shite at the moment. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They really are poor. And it's just such a shame for Leicester, obviously. Sorry, Leicester fans, but you won the league that long ago, and it was, for my money, the greatest achievement in team sport history. So I feel it's not outrageous to mention it again, but it wasn't that long ago they win the league. They're in European competition. They're a solid Premier League side. And one thought, when they get back in the division, can they re-establish themselves? It's not happening. And the danger is you become a yo-yo side. And as a Fulham fan, I know that only too well. But with a change of manager, Maresca going out and then Cooper coming in, wasn't a good fit. Van Nistelrooy looks an even worse fit. I mean, under Cooper, it's pointless to say this, but I wonder if they'd fared better. But under Van Nistelrooy, I mean, you saw that game against Brentford. Vish, my goodness, did they look poor.
Yeah, it was always going to be a risk, and it was always a risk that they took on potential, really, on Van Nistelrooy's managerial potential. When you needed someone kind of hardwired to what it takes to emerge unscathed, or relatively unscathed from that that part of the Premier League table. It was, to my mind, it was never going to work. It was nice. They probably bought into a bit much of the hype around him having that interim period after Ten Hag had departed from Manchester United. The fact that he pasted them twice, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. It's a familiar face.
And he does, because they've been pasted many times since then while he's been stood in the dugout. I'm always inclined to feel more, feel worse for Ipswich, because they clearly have a plan. They clearly have an idea. I think the issue with Leicester is that They played one way at the start of the season. They're trying to play a different way now, and it's just categorically not working.
And again in the Championship, played a very distinct way under Maresca as well.
Well, yes. So you think about that. That's essentially three different brands in 18 months.
But do you have a bit of a sympathy for them, though, Vish, because they lose a manager that's delivered them Premier League, have achieved the Premier League through no fault of their own, just through the kind of the apex predator system that is the Premier League.
Yes, yeah.
They can't do anything about that, right? So they've been forced into making a move. The moves they've made have clearly, in retrospect, been poor. And there's obviously other issues going on at Leicester that fans are very keen to bring our attention to. But the kind of the genesis of all of this is the fact that they lose Maresca.
Yeah.
What can you do apart from what could they have done?
Yeah, true. But that's you can see that tussle, I suppose, tactically on the field within their own system. Like, it feels like Vardy's independent of all that, but it doesn't really feel like anyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. The fact that even given the board unrest at the club, that Van Nistelrooy has managed to put himself in a position where he is also like, you know, separate to that, they're also calling for him to go because they don't trust him. He clearly doesn't really have a grasp of his squad. And also, I think, you know, from a selfish point of view, suddenly it feels like there is nothing, you know, up for grabs going into this last part of the season. It feels like you know, Wolves, as we've spoken before, because of their squad, they're pulling away from it, despite the fact that they're 17th in terms of the relegation battle. The title's already sorted, so we're kind of scrabbling around looking for our points of interest now.
I think there's a wider discussion to be had around this relegation picture, though, because even if it is, you know, done, which probably is, just because those teams just don't pick up enough points to make it interesting. It's very unlikely you see this kind of phoenix rising from the ashes. That we see it once or twice, but not that often. But that in itself becomes an interesting discussion for a couple of things that Vish has touched on, but also something else as well. Because last season, the promoted 3 teams go down again. First time since 1998, second time ever. Looks like it's going to happen again. And it's interesting to think about, given some of the stuff Vish touched on there, whether this is now becoming an emerging pattern, because teams that come up, now it seems, you can take this season and last season as a small sample size, but a sample size nonetheless. They seem to have to change their way of playing to such an extent they have no real chance of making an impact, because the players they have either aren't used to playing aren't used to playing that way, or just are nowhere near the level they need to be at to prosecute another system. And so it happened with Company's Burnley. Happened with Martin Southampton dramatically. It's definitely happening with Leicester, although there's a change of manager there, so that's probably muddies the waters.
I would say the sides who have a very distinct type of style, if you see what I mean, because I always used to bemoan this when, you know, my team Fulham, and would notice it with others, would go up from the Championship. You're used to winning most weeks in the Championship. You're flying high, and then you've got to go right. You know, unless you sign incredibly well. And of course, every signing's a gamble, etc., etc. You know, it's backs against the walls, and it's a slog, and that is just the reality of it. But I think those with a very distinct style, you could argue, and a particular type of style, the whole playing out from the back and so on, it's very difficult to go up doing that, because did Brentford change an awful lot under Thomas Frank? But that style of football he plays is very effective, it's very pragmatic.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is how many years ago was that?
Indeed,
I'm talking about being the start of an emerging new trend, because even Ipswich, who've got one of the most highly rated, thoughtful managers in England, are still not making really an impact. They still find it very, very difficult.
Yeah, so I'm saying that I think that but your point about, you know, having to change your style of play, that's always been there. But I think it's a particular style of play from that sample size. But I think the trend is, time will tell, but there could be a trend. And the reason for that is, if you look at the teams above the relegation zone, you mentioned Wolves there, you then leap to West Ham on 30. West Ham won't get relegated. And West Ham...
Because they made the twist, didn't they?
Well, did, yeah. But I mean, even if they didn't...
But look at the 3 teams above Wolves.
Well, indeed. That's what I'm about to say. You know, West Ham, Manchester United, teams. Everton, Palace, Spurs, Brentford, and then we're into the top 10. Out of those clubs, do you see any of them potentially getting relegated next season?
So let me phrase it another way then. That's my point. Are we? I
think we're agreeing.
We probably are. From the start of last season through to where we are now and going forward, are we now actually seeing what a lot of people have been warning against for a very long time, that the Premier League is almost now literally going to become a closed shop?
Yeah, well, that's
totally closed shop.
And that's what I'm saying. You know, all those clubs, as you say, established sides. You know, Everton, and because they changed manager, they're fine. There was talk about potentially relegation. Well, that's because, you know, Dyche had probably done all he could there, and, you know, is used to relegation scraps. So, you know, again, not a top level Premier League manager, shall we say? No disrespect, but also there was the whole points deduction, all that kind of stuff, a complete and utter mess. So unless someone has a disaster next season, the 3 teams that will come under scrutiny will be the 3 teams. You know, totally. That will be where the smart money is.
And I think it becomes really interesting, because there's 2 things you can consider. Like, one, you know, we see a reasonable amount of, say, American fans of the Premier League, and we speak to them online, or they make themselves known through the Discord, or we meet them at live shows, or whatever it may be. And one of the things they always say is promotion and relegation is really exciting, right? Don't get that in American sport, right? If we're seeing almost a de facto end to that because it's just 3 teams rotating around every time. That's lost. That's massively lost. And the second thing is question to think about an interesting way to maybe try and solve the problem. If you were to be promoted into the Premier League from the Championship in whatever fashion, how do you then stay up? Because it's very difficult to think of a way you can do it now. I think the gap has been getting bigger every season, and now we're getting to the point where it's just almost now insurmountable. Because the biggest problem back in the day was a few years ago would be, where do you get a goal scorer from that can do it at Premier League level? How do you convince a player to come in and play for you, knowing they might get relegated at the end of the season? And the answer to that is normally things like relegation release clauses in their contracts. That's like kind of hedging your bets with the player. Mm-hmm. Now it just feels like it's very difficult for a player to get a player in at all. And it's very difficult to even think about bridging that gap, which then leads you to think, well, what's the point of being promoted in the first place? The gap is massive now. Think of an Ipswich player that you can use as a microcosm for this, and it's not Liam Delap, it's Leif Davis. Leif Davis was absolutely outstanding in the Championship last season, to the point where, Marcus, when you and I were doing Lars Watch, we'd be getting people saying, he's got to be in the England squad. What's he done this season? Nothing. He's done nothing. I think he's got 2 assists. I think he might have scored a goal. He's done nothing. He's not made an impact on the Premier League in any way, shape or form. And he is one of the players who's seen one of the big, bright sparks. Now, it's not to say you're never going to get players who can't make that step up. Jed Spencer's another good example in a similar position. But the point is, when they're playing in that promoted team, they can't have an impact. They're not able to stand out.
Yeah. The football purist of me, and maybe even the realist in me as well, is reluctant to say it'll become a closed shop, just because you never know. Teams can have a disaster. Football can be cyclical and all these kind of things, because, sorry to mention it, but Haley's comment stuff, but Leicester won the league. Forest and Bournemouth could be playing Champions League next season. We thought there was a top 4 and then there was a big 6. Well, 2 of those apparent big 6 that were invited and accepted the offer into a Super League, lest we forget. Never forget, Vish. But Manchester United and Spurs have had shocking seasons this year.
I get it, but I think that's a slightly separate point.
Indeed, but I just think...
Do you know what Forest and Bournemouth had, though? Those clubs, the current clubs at the bottom 3 haven't.
Money.
Investment.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, because if chairs are coming up and looking at the Premier League being like, God, we've got to spend a lot to compete. Mm-hmm. Parachute payments are pretty nice, though. Mm-hmm. That initial hit of TV money, that's pretty nice. Why don't we just try and make that profit as much as possible? And what's the point? If we're there or thereabouts come January, and it's a case of a couple of signings here and there, let's do it, which is what Ipswich did. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, what does it matter?
Well, the big worry would be is if you then get the same teams going up and down. Yo-yo clubs. I mean, Leeds, Sheffield United, and Burnley have all been in the Premier League fairly recently. I mean, it'd be great if Sunderland could get promoted and maybe sort of buck that trend a little bit, and 1 or 2 others. But that would be a real problem, I think, for the footballing pyramid. If not only you get the closed shop in the Premier League, you get basically 23, 24, 25 teams that are...
We kind of there are... what I don't want to do is in this discussion is get confused between exceptions that prove rules and rules.
Yeah.
Like Leicester won the Premier League. I mean... it's amazing, obviously, but in the context of this discussion, it's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right. The fact that, Ipswich go up League One into Championship to Premier League, that's amazing. They deserve credit for that. Kieran McKenna's done an amazing job. But it's an exception. What you're talking about there, it's not the exact same 3 teams that go down and come up again, but it is really a kind of cycle. It's not that often. It's 3 teams from nowhere in the Championship get up into the Premier League.
Yeah,
you have little chinks in the armour. People can't take advantage of it, or there's weird seasons where someone can come in and take advantage of a gap. And we saw that. We're seeing that now with Forest and Bournemouth up there. But I think what we're talking about is a general trend, and the general trend needs to be looked at across a longer period. And I'm asking, and we can't do that at the moment because we haven't lived the future.
But you're saying
yet.
This is the start of the trend?
I think it probably is, because let me put it another way then. Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton, they're probably going to get relegated this season. One of them definitely is. Tell me a standout player from any of those teams.
No, I agree.
You could probably go Liam Delap.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hutchison maybe, but I mean, Liam Delap...
Really?
Yeah,
I mean, we like him, good player, but has he really been a massive impact in the Premier League?
Yeah, no, I think...
He's influenced a couple of games, but I take your point. Yeah,
I mean, Delap would be the one, even though Delap he's not going to be bothering the top goal scorer charts, and that is certainly not a criticism.
No, he's not in the top 10 even.
Yeah, exactly. So we're saying Delap because of the potential.
Potential for sure.
Indeed, look, absolutely. So I think I sincerely hope, and I think we all do, that this isn't the start of a trend. But I totally accept and understand the point that it is showing signs that it could.
The thing is, though, like we talk about how preoccupied the top teams are with, almost, hoarding their wealth, like dragons sitting on the gold kind of thing. And you mentioned it there with the Super League. And what Manchester United have tried to do for the last 2 seasons is spread it around a bit. So they're coming down there.
Yeah,
they're down in 60. Look, what are you lads up to down here?
Isn't that indicative as well, though, of how Man United's probably a bit of a special case because they're literally probably in the top 3 biggest clubs in the world. But like they can be as bad as you can imagine them to get, and they're still nowhere near getting ready.
It's a lovely touch. It's like everyone watches Secret Billionaire and thinks, "Oh, this is nice, isn't it? Look how homely they are."
I also find it interesting, slightly separate point, but I find it interesting. There's not really a standout goal scorer in the Championship this season either. Like no one's on like 30 goals. Like the top scorer.
Is that all Scott Parker's fault, do you think?
It could be. He's stopping everyone scoring.
Boring bastard.
Yeah.
Oh, they won 4-0, didn't they, last week?
It'd be interesting if they go up, what style of football they play.
But do you know, you guys probably don't follow the Championship as closely as I do, but do you know the top scorer at the moment is Sainz for Norwich in the Championship? Guess how many goals he's got at the end of February? Guess how many goals
9.
he's got in the league?
Yeah, it's not many.
15.
Yeah.
It's not many, is it?
That'll be mental.
Yeah, that would be Scott Parker style. Yeah.
Although it's still a respectful.
I'm not denigrating his achievement. I'm just saying, if Norwich do end up in the Premier League next season, which is totally unlikely, I'm not sure he's going to make an impact either.
Okay. Now, coming up after this, there's only one Hotspur, Tottenham Hotspur. Right then, we mentioned Ipswich Town's 4-1 defeat against Tottenham Hotspur. On the flip side, that means Spurs have now won their last 3 Premier League games. How about that one? One of them did include Brentford, to be fair.
Yeah.
Away from home. I
mean, Manchester United and then Ipswich, but it's
There you gimmies right there.
Not for Fulham, sadly. Yeah. It's the first time they've done so since December 2023. Ange Postecoglou said post-match on Saturday, from our perspective, these last 2 weeks have given us a breather and reset our football. I'm pleased the boys have embraced it. I mean, that game against Ipswich, the first 5 minutes or whatever it was mad. Ipswich could have been 2 up.
Yeah,
they didn't. They didn't capitalise on it. So it was a bit crazy. And then Tottenham's quality did shine through. We have to say, Brennan Johnson at the back post. They lovely having him back in the side for them. And I just think, just keep pressing that button. You'll get a bit of joy.
It's also great for him because he's in big danger of just becoming the consolation goal king. Which can befall you if you're a Spurs player. And for him to score some impactful goals and a win away from home is important.
Nice to see Son doing a little lollipop here and there.
Yeah, he found it from somewhere.
There we are.
Back of the dusty cupboard somewhere. There it is. I still do one of them.
What were you saying about Ipswich having a bit of a League One Championship hybrid squad?
Yeah, but it is. Look, Ange Postecoglou's been under an incredible amount of pressure, and the way the world is these days, and we'd have seen it. Online as well as everyone else does. You haven't got to be a Spurs fan to have seen Postecoglou pop up on social media with these clips over and over again, being asked questions, being quite spiky going back, partly because that's his personality anyway, but partly because he's under pressure. And it is fair to point out, I think, given that they've now played only 3 games in whatever it's 15 days, if you include the FA Cup defeat they had, they've won 2 of those games. Off the back of that, they've had a bit of a break. They go and beat Man United. Fine, it was a terrible game.
They won it though. They won it.
Between 2 shit teams, but they won it. And then they go away from home, get 6 days off, and go and win again. Right? Yeah. That's fair enough. I think it's only fair we point that out, given the amount of stick and pressure he's had and been under. So the issue, though, isn't really that. The issue is that this is another season, with the exception of the Europa League, I suppose, which is still in its early stages. This is another season where they are, they're writing off the league. Ultimately now, for a team the size of Spurs, with the budget they've got, the money they've had, they have now really just got to say, we're on the Europa League and that's it. We're focusing 100% on that.
Yeah, because there's no way they're going to get relegated. They were never going to get
relegated. We'll go through the motions in the Premier League. We'll try and keep our players, get our players back fit. I wonder actually if he is if he's not bringing Romero and Van der Ven and players like that back in because he thinks, you know what, I'll just give them as much time as they need now because we're focused on the Europa League. I wouldn't be surprised if when they play Alkmaar in the away game, the first one away at the start of March, if you see those guys back.
Yeah.
And that's how he's going to focus on it now. So, look, they deserve credit because they get a lot of stick when they do badly, but it's still fairly thin gruel. I mean, you've beaten a promoted team and you've beaten a historically bad Man United team, but they've had a break and they've made it count.
Yeah, they have. I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, yeah, as I say, I was kind of thinking, should they twist on Ange, but very much in the minority with that view, and I've changed it. You'll be pleased to know.
But they can't because it becomes
untenable for the reasons, as you said, it would probably be Ryan Mason who would step in.
Ultimately, put it another way though, Vish, maybe you've got a take on this. The fact they've beaten Ipswich at Portman Road is not going to make those 1,000 fans outside the stadium last week that were protesting feel any different, is it?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and also bear in mind this is also a period they've come off where they've been knocked out of 2 cup competitions, and really the big thing comes up in the next 3 weeks, really, where they've got 3 games at home. They've got City in midweek. They've got Bournemouth as well, and they also have that round of 16 clash in the Europa League against AZ Alkmaar. So they're in a situation where actually it just whatever feeling is now, it could be gone, just like that. In the much time that it has kind of recultivated itself.
But, still. They're now still, for the rest of the season, no more than 90 minutes away from their season being over.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I would be intrigued if they were up against AZ Alkmaar, and there's a lot of chat about some of the big players not coming back, and if the manager of AZ was asked, what do you think? And Admiral Alkmaar just said, it's a trap!
It's a big long run up for that one.
Yeah.
I stayed with you, I did, but it was an effort for me.
You didn't know where it was going, though, did you?
I didn't really know.
One for the fans there, Star Wars in particular. But I think with Spurs, the point I was making, though, with Ange, when I thought, should they move him on, is because I just wondered, if they get the players back, is he so demoralised and is the mood so bad under him now that will that make a huge difference? But to be fair, there were flickers against Ipswich. As I say, Brennan Johnson scoring, Son looking a little bit better, Kulusevski scoring a cooler, sexy goal.
Nice.
But to be fair, we've come to
he's emerged from this whole period with a bit of credit anyway.
Yeah, because he's a quality player. So do you think, though, that coming back, those players coming back, that it's not a completely
Ched Spence as well, moved to right back, scores.
Yes, I do believe that they're in a better place now with those players coming back, with for the reason that Luke has kind of hinted at there, in that some of the players who've come in and filled those roles because they've needed to, because they've needed bodies in all kind of places, have actually done well enough that they've almost carried the sense of, actually, this is not all completely shit themselves. And they've all been young players. So they've been Jed Spence, Archie Gray, obviously, but Bergval's emergence from... I remember there was a bit in pre-season where I think they were playing in Korea and Bergval comes on the big screen and he's obviously, boyish good looks, flowing blonde hair, and the crowd start hooting at him, being like, God, who is this gorgeous little boy? And it really felt like, he looked so young in that particular clip that I saw, that I was like, oh, I wonder if he's actually any good. I wonder if we'll see him much this season. And as it's happened, he's had to play a lot, but he's really stood up and bossed that midfield. I think, the Ipswich game in particular, we've already talked about, Ipswich's quality and whatever relative to other Premier League teams. But he has taken on a bit more responsibility. He's someone who has, endless amounts of energy. He reads the game really well. He has been such a positive for them this season, essentially building out of the ashes of those various, those myriad, rather, of injury issues they've had. So when you've got those senior players coming back in, they're coming back in with more around them to support them, I suppose, and for that reason, that's only a good thing. Like the fact that
it's been a good thing to emerge from this crisis. But I don't think he's bossed in midfield. I've not seen him boss in midfield. I've seen him play pretty well.
No, he bossed it on against Ipswich. Yeah.
Okay, fine. But as a general rule, that's not what he's been doing.
As a general rule, Spurs also don't boss midfield.
No, that's true.
Probably,
but I understand your point that he's played very well.
I think
and that should be recognised.
For him to make that step from Djurgårdens up to Spurs at the age he is and be put in that environment, forget his ability, which is obviously good. It's just an amazing testament to the character he is and the strength of mind he's got, and the strength of will. Because he's 19 years old. That stadium is a cauldron when things are going badly. And he stood up to all that. He deserves a huge amount of credit. Him and Gray, particularly, I would say, deserve an amazing amount of credit. Spence deserves credit for a slightly different reason, for basically rekindling his Spurs career through taking an opportunity that's presented to itself because the manager had no other choice but to play him. And now he's one of the first names on the team sheet. So there's always positive things to come out of this. They call it green shoots in the political world, don't they?
They do. Do Tottenham Hotspur themselves, as a club, take an enormous amount of credit on standing firm on what they want to be called?
Yeah, this was an odd story.
It was, yeah.
Which is why we called them Tottenham in the intro.
Indeed. It's what they won't want. So we talked about leaked emails with Manchester United yesterday, which was all very funny and embarrassing from their point of view. Well, another email has been leaked, this time at Tottenham Hotspur. It turns out that in a strongly worded email, Spurs have requested that from now on all broadcasters refer to them as Tottenham Hotspur or Spurs, but not Tottenham.
Yeah.
The club seemed to be very keen to emphasise that they're the only Hotspur in English football. Their brand playbook outlines the following. In a world full of Uniteds. See, it's like a film, isn't it? In a world
do it like that.
In a world full of Uniteds, cities and rovers.
It's very much more camp than the
Yeah.
Isn't it more like this? Isn't it more like, in a world?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. You started went a bit Emmanuel there.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
There's only one Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur. So in a world full of United cities and rovers, they're forgetting Wednesdays and Forests as well, and Alexandras and Argyles.
Albions.
Yeah.
Rangerses. There's only one Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah. Isn't this an interesting story?
Be a crap film, that.
We are
Daniel Levy walking over this.
Oh, he'll make it. There's it'll be a budget movie, won't it? It'll be a very small indie movie. The interesting part of this is that it's actually had an impact, right? So the Athletic were pointing out that Sky Sports have started putting them in the Premier League table as Tottenham Hotspur, and they've made those changes as per the brand document, which a lot of companies have to make sure there's consistency around what they look and sound like, and it's important for those different kind of boring marketing reasons. But it's the interest in this particular example is the juxtaposition between what fans think a football club is and what the top brass think. How important it is to be seen as a quote unquote brand in the modern world, because ultimately they have a position that they don't want to be referred to as Tottenham because they want to make a distinction between the area of London and the club. Whereas actually, if you could argue a lot of the fan behaviour is they're very proud to be from that part of the world. They're very proud to sing, we are Tottenham, Super Tottenham from the lane. Yeah. That's their song. They're not going to stop singing that song. And it's completely unthinkable that the ownership at Spurs are going to say to the fan groups, can you please stop singing that song that refers to us as Tottenham? Can you only please sing songs that refer to us as Spurs or Tottenham Hotspur? That's just not going to happen because the worlds are different, right? The worlds they're operating are different. So apart from the fact that it makes them look quite silly, we perhaps just have to accept that is the modern world in which we live, and clubs are brands now, and they need consistency of brands to get the cut through they want, because that's how marketing people speak.
Fish, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Premier League have been doing this for a while. I remember I did a bit of work for them, and I was told it's Tottenham Hotspurs or Spurs. So I was like, oh, yeah, fine. But I think Luke summed it up well there. It's just not for them. It's like if, for example, say Anfield sold their naming rights and they were now the whatever stadium.
The Nike Stadium.
Yeah, people still refer to them as Anfield. Yeah. So, owners and whatever, chief execs, they can have their cake and eat it too. So
yeah, some people have suggested there's an idea that, if you really identify yourself in that marketplace as Tottenham Hotspur, that's a copyrightable, trademarkable phrase. You can then much more easily stop people selling merchandise, stuff like that, which is why all the merch will have that stuff on it. But to me, I agree with what Jack Pitt-Brooks said in The Athletic. For many fans, there is no distinction between the club and the area itself. They are synonymous. They will continue to be Tottenham regardless of what the guidance says. I agree with that, but I think it misses a slight difference, which is, as I've already said, they're speaking to a marketing strategy, not a fan group. And football's always had that uneasy relationship between we're a football club and quote unquote our fans are the most important thing in the world to us. But also, if we want to succeed off the pitch and do the things that other mature businesses do, we have to do it this way as well. So they're talking in two completely different worlds to two completely different people. And these press release type decks that get put out, this one's been extrapolated out and been used in a kind of context that perhaps isn't that helpful, I would say.
Shame Andy's not here, because obviously being a fan of AFC Dons, he would probably have
and Sporting Lisbon of Portugal.
Indeed, absolutely, so there we are. Coming up after this, how a club CEO fell in love with a mascot. Now then, gentlemen, we've got some Premier League football tonight. How about that? Which game takes your fancy? We've got Brighton v Bournemouth, a big South Coast derby, of course, Luke Moore. Palace against Aston Villa. Wolves versus Fulham. Chelsea versus Southampton. Let's start with a bit of Palace and Aston Villa chat. Palace, they're at home. So Villa have got a chance, because away from home, Palace are unbelievably good at the moment. I mean, they're very good at Craven Cottage. Munoz, that was a lovely goal, wasn't it?
It was a beauty.
Have you seen a player sell a dummy more than he sold Calvin Bassey?
There was one earlier in the season, a few weeks ago, where someone was sent for an absolute hot dog, but I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
It was against City, wasn't it, I think? It was Guardiola, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
That was the only one I can think of.
Delict as well at Anfield.
Oh, yeah. But that one...
narrowing it down, isn't it?
But the way Munoz, he sells him, and then, my goodness, he punishes Fulham for that.
You've got to punish.
It's like
doing a nutmeg and not getting ball around the other side, doesn't it?
Yeah. And just that glorious thing, when you're at the angle, go for the roof of the net.
Always. Because there's go across the goal. So if the keeper's no... Go through the keeper.
Ryan Giggs showed us this at Villa Park, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he did. Yeah.
Because if you don't go for the roof of the net, a goalkeeper will be standing in the way.
Yes.
And it won't be a goal.
That won't be a goal, yeah.
Indeed, yeah. So an interesting time. I mean, Villa look more energised with Marco Asensio and Marcus Rashford. Of course, they were crucial to their win against Chelsea.
It's really interesting that, because what's happened with the introduction of Rashford off the bench again with two assists, Asensio scoring 2 goals, what's happened with the signing of Marco Asensio and Marcus Rashford is exactly what Unai Emery wanted to happen.
Yeah.
It's happened, and he couldn't have planned it any better. He couldn't have placed them in position better than they actually did it. Well, and for them to be a kind of rapidly fading Chelsea now was interesting. Asensio scoring early in this kind of truncated Aston Villa career he might have is massively important. Yeah. Massively.
He's up and running. It's always nice to have a Marcus and a Marco, it would appear.
Yes.
Unai Emery said about Marcus Rashford, he wants to see more and more.
Do you reckon he'll start? Do you reckon? Because what he's done, what is interesting about it is he's. You finished? Because here's more. Yeah. You want more? He's in.
Oh, yeah. Name.
He's resisted the temptation to play Rashford off one of the wings from the start. He stuck with Ramsey, stuck with Rodgers, and he's brought Rashford as an impact player. The mischievous part of me thinks, yeah, but Rashford, you want to play, don't you? So how long are you going to put up with this?
Yeah.
How long are you going to come off the bench, get a couple of assists, and not be knocking on the manager's door?
Yeah, he started against Liverpool, though.
Did he? Okay, right. He didn't start on this game against Chelsea, I guess.
No, he didn't.
Well, we spoke about it after the Liverpool game, about that they can have closers and finishers depending on the game situation. And
that's absolutely the case in modern football now, yeah. But if you're playing the profile of Rashford, I mean, not sure you're going to buy that.
But it could be proved to be a masterstroke, though, from Emery, this Fish, because you're talking about 2 new players in there. I mean, at times, if he starts them both, I mean, it's almost 2/3 of a new front line, and it's clicked.
But when we talk about signings coming in, even when they come in during the summer, there is always a fascinating bit about where they fit in, not just culturally, but also, within the system as it was. And the recruitment, even, going for Marlon earlier on in this January window, was with an onus on what could do with a bit more pace, a bit more cutting edge up front. And they've got it in space. Like, even the sight of them defending, they scored, Asensio scores in the 9th minute to put them 2-1 up. They have a big chunk of injury time, and they're defending it with the front four of Asensio, Marlon, Rashford, and Leon Bailey.
Yeah.
And it was a sense of like, right, you've obviously just chucked them on there to win the game. be interesting to see what they do from now. And Rashford was really diligent. I don't know if you saw, but there was a point where actually Villa had quite a good break on late in stoppage time, and Rashford didn't go. It was like 2-on-1, 3-on-1 maybe, and Rashford didn't go because he knew, like, well, I mean, I might grab a goal here, but if we lose the ball, it's coming back up this way, need to get in position. It's genuinely been a joy watching him.
It has.
And yeah, like part of the reason that I, as a Manchester United fan, wanted him to leave Manchester United because I know he had much more to give, and this felt like it was slowly killing his creativity. And already in this short space of time, there's clearly been a bit of a rejuvenation there, and a lot of that is on Emery and those Aston Villa players.
I spring on his step, really. And,
I just think Emery's done such a good job.
Well, he is, but they needed to act. And that's the thing.
Did you think so?
Yeah, I did.
Because of the. Are you saying that because of like the volume of games they'd come into and the volume of games they've already had, that they needed that fresh blood? Or
but all of that, and also as well that the fact is that it's such a tight pack in there that trying to finish in the top 4 or 5 is realistically you've got to do that again if you want to be in the Champions League. You don't want to be the team who went, do you remember that a few years ago when we had that little season in the Champions League?
And Newcastle kind of are going through. Yeah.
And also you've got to have the clearness of vision to understand that this season's just quite weird. It's there for them again. They're 2 points off the top 4 now.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's a real opportunity for them to do something. And I think I said Emery's done a brilliant job, which of course he has. It just feels like a lifetime ago now that Steven Gerrard was managing them, but what Aston Villa fans will be probably thinking, and I would say rightly so, is this is the restoration of a club the size of Aston Villa being back where they were really the first knock-ins of the Premier League. First season of the Premier League, they finished second. If you look at their list of finishes around the mid-90s onwards, 4th, 5th, 7th, 6th, 6th, 8th, 8th. This is where they are. This is where they should be. They've fallen on really tough times, but this is really a restoration back to where they should be. Now they're 7th, 4th, and now they're probably going to do something around there again. Yeah. It's really where they should be for the size of club they are. They can pay good money. They get players, get fans through the door. They're used to having success. They're a team that's won the European Cup before, so it's great to see. Those of us who are traditional Premier League fans, Marcus, who remember it from back in the day, will know Aston Villa being a big part of it.
Premiership it
was for a while. Exactly. And Emery's would you say Emery, without having won, he's never won the Champions League, has he, Emery?
No.
So that's obviously a big mark against it. But you could say he's got to be one of the most underrated managers in the world. He has to be for what he's able to do.
Well, I think now at Villa he's very much rated, isn't he? I think before Villa, I think you could say maybe that, but what he's shown.
Well, just because our experience of him in England was that he didn't really do it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a country-to-country thing. I don't think people in Spain underrate Emery.
Yeah, because, I mean, winning the Europa League with Villarreal is
3 times in a row.
A stunning achievement.
At Sevilla as well.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, that's, one might say, well, of course you're going to win it at Sevilla, yeah, but you've got to continue that tradition.
3 years in a row, though.
It's class. It's absolute class. Yeah. But people kind of probably dismiss his time at PSG and go, well, of course you're going to win the league and so on. So you then move to the other big club he's managed, Arsenal. But what he's done at Villa is absolutely stunning. But they're going to have to beat Crystal Palace tonight, and Palace themselves are in a very good moment. I mean, Oliver Glasner marked his 1-year anniversary in charge of Palace with that 2-0 win at Fulham. Again, they look great, and despite being a fan of the home side in that game, it was great to see Eberechi Eze doing his stuff. Denied one of the assists of the season because of a marginal offside.
Yeah, cruel.
But that second goal, the first goal obviously slightly fortuitous, but it goes in. But the second goal, the way they broke and the way Mateta just gallops forward and holds players off, he's playing with that confidence and getting the goals like he did. Again, we go on about that end of the season they had last year, but they've picked it up in the last couple of months. We did, I think it was yourself or Jim Vish that I did a reacts with, and we were talking about Palace. And it was in the maybe it was the FA Cup game which they won quite comfortably. And we said, they are quietly going about their business. Now, it's a little bit of a shame for them that, because they are looking up in the table, that Brighton are 7 points above them, because I think would 9th be a best place finish for them in the Premier League? Certainly in that top half, just because of the teams in there. A top half finish would be a huge achievement, but it might just be a little bit out of reach for them.
Yeah, but they're probably in a position where they're happy for it to be a bit quiet.
Yeah, maybe.
And a bit kind of calm. There's been a lot of stuff going on around Palace, around the ownership, around the Hodgson thing. He's gone, he's come back again. They're struggling against relegation, what they're going to do. Glasner came in, didn't he, and did well initially. Then they found it really hard to get going this season, and now they're just comfortable. And I know being a fan of a club isn't really about that. It's about the excitement, it's about the emotion. But, I think they've earned, a few months off, and what Glasner's done is essentially, got them into a position where they haven't got to worry about anything for a bit.
I tell you what, you'd have enjoyed your mate Will Hughes' performance for Palace against Fulham.
I think he's a really good Premier League operator.
What I would I think if you were playing against him, you would have very much called him an irritant in that game.
He's full of energy. He doesn't really catch anyone's eye or attention.
He might catch their legs once in a while, but in a very measured way.
He lifts them up, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Sorry for that.
In a way that, he's not going to get sent off. He's not going to get in trouble. He's just maybe the right side of the line.
I think he's a really good Premier League operator. He's got no nonsense, no fuss.
Yeah. Also, he's had a lot more work to do since they moved to a 3 at the back as well.
Yeah, he has.
And Lacroix, who's come in, has been really good as well.
Yeah.
So they've got Villa tonight, and it's a big game because Bournemouth away to Brighton. In terms of Champions League spots, that's a tough assignment for Bournemouth. Chelsea have got Southampton at home, which could just be the pick-me-up that maybe Chelsea need because they've...
Well, if it isn't, there's big problems.
There is big problems.
I was really, really upset when I saw this fixture and thinking... João Felix could have got loads.
Look, just enjoy him in that Milan shirt.
Yeah, 79.
Yeah.
And then Wolves against Fulham, and if Fulham play like they did against Palace, then Palace did restrict them. Then Wolves could pull away further from the rele zone, or Fulham could do something pretty good and then give me false hope of European football next year.
That's how it works, isn't it? That's how it works, right?
That's how football works, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Well, given the way the finals are shaping up, the domestic finals, it could be, down to 8th, couldn't it?
Could be.
So,
could be.
Never know.
Right, Oliver Glasner, his former club Eintracht Frankfurt have been in the headlines. Yes, they were gubbed by Harry Kane and Eric Dyer's Bayern on the weekend. But their CEO, Marcus Kroesche, revealed last week that he fell in love with the club's mascot while playing at Paderborn. His now wife, Victoria,
there we go.
How about that? Would occasionally wear the costume of the club's mouse mascot, Holly, on match days as a part of her marketing job.
It's an absolutely chilling mascot as well. It's like a bright blue mouse.
Yeah.
That it's basically like a cartoon. Which one's Tom? Which one's Jerry? Jerry's the mouse, right?
Yeah, Tom's the cat.
Tom's the cat. Yeah. So it looks like actually it doesn't matter because it looks like a combination of both of them. Actually,
Yeah.
Okay.
Cross with a Smurf.
I took those things as completely independent. I thought he fell in love with a mascot,
I know what you're going to say.
and then got his wife to dress up as it, rather than he
We're
fell
not
in
saying
love.
that hasn't happened as well.
Yeah, well. I feel a bit uncomfortable about this.
Should we end the show with something perhaps more wholesome after you've just given everybody that idea? I want to go to South Korea, baby. Jesse Lingard's back in business, back among the goals. He scored FC Seoul's first goal of the season as they beat their rivals 2-1. And in scoring the goal, which was a lovely little floater, he did 5 different celebrations.
Of course.
Yeah, so
I just love it. I love the Lingard in South Korea story. We were concerned at the start where he wasn't really playing that much, and I think it was the owner or the manager said, this is just ridiculous. Like I don't know what this guy's about, essentially, because he just turned up, he's doing nothing. And then
look at his TikTok. He's up to loads. What are you talking about?
Indeed, Vish, indeed. And then I thought, I look away now, and I did. A few months later, go back, and there he is, striking up the band, leading them all on a merry dance. And I thought, there we are. You see.
So he did a little tongue out. Then he did a little dab, didn't he? Still doing a dab.
He did
Brilliant.
the dab. He did the old Lingard, with that
J-Lings.
What, the trademark J-Ling celebration, Marcus? Please give it a bit of respect.
Yeah, all right.
Also, Julian Lopetegui.
But he did a tribute to J-Lop.
Yeah.
But then the Sun described it as 5 different ones. They were really running out of them afterwards because at one point the 4th celebration, the Sun's 5 celebrations was hugging a pair of teammates. I don't think it really counts. I don't think that really counts. And then they just writ off the 5th one, saying it was some kind of dance move.
A celebratory jog back to the halfway line.
Oh, yeah.
Is it fair to say that people who score lots of goals don't really worry with all that stuff today?
No.
It's almost it gives the vibe with J-Lings that like he's really got to make the most of this one.
I don't know. I think he just loves it. I think he scored a fair few goals in his time. FA Cup winning goal.
I feel
World Cup goal.
I feel like during his hot streak, he took on and created so many new brands that they all need representation at some point.
Yes.
And 3 of them came up yesterday.
He's got 46 league goals in his entire career. So
all right.
How many have you scored?
0.
Yeah. No, league goals. Which league did you play?
47.
0.
There we go. Thank you very much for listening to the Football Ramble, part of the Acast Creator Network. We'll be back tomorrow with some more ramblings. Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vish.
Thanks.
And thank you, Jesse Lingard.